Welcome and thank you for joining me for this installment of You Don't Need a Business Plan to Secure a Financing Solution for Your Business, brought to you by Constructum Online Learning. In this video, I look at case study 2, Purchase Order Finance. Thabang's Medical Consumables with a 3-year track record. In this case study, I consider how Thabang can prepare for an application for purchase order finance. Thabang needs to fulfill an order from a large blue chip company, but Thabang does not have the capital to secure the stock from suppliers. What is purchase order finance and how can Thabang prepare for an application for finance? Before we start, please remember Principle 3. Answer the 4 questions. Please consider watching Principle 3 in Section 1 together with the other principles before you watch the case studies. This will give you a good basic understanding of the principles of financing. When preparing for an application for finance, you must answer all 4 of the questions and substantiate your answers with supporting documentation. We will get to that in more detail in a few minutes. What is purchase order finance? The best way to understand is by way of an example. Thabang's business supplies medical consumables to hospitals. Thabang sources the stock from suppliers. When Thabang secures a purchase order from one of his clients, he quickly places an order with his supplier. But there's a snag. Thabang's client demands 30-day payment terms, whilst his supplier demands upfront payment. Thabang needs capital to secure the stock. It takes 40 days for the stock to arrive and to be delivered to the customer. Then Thabang must wait another 30 days for the customer to pay. A financier steps in and agrees to provide a financing solution. Thabang cedes the purchase order to the financier and provides the financier with a supplier invoice. The financier pays the supplier and the supplier releases the consignment to be delivered to the customer. After 30 days, the customer pays the invoice directly to the financier, who withholds the capital portion of the loan plus finance costs. The net sales revenue is then paid to Thabang. The cost of finance is calculated over the term of the trade duration of 70 days. When might a business consider purchase order finance? Purchase order finance is a solution for a wholesale type of business where the wholesaler procures stock in response to receiving a purchase order from a customer. These customers are typically large corporate buyers. Financiers will assess the financial credibility of the corporate buyers to determine the viability of extending purchase order finance. Typically, financiers are hesitant to provide purchase order finance where government, municipalities, or state-owned entities are involved because of the high incidence of maladministration and corruption associated with these entities. What type of stock may be financed by way of purchase order finance? Typically, financiers are keen to finance finished products. A finished product is something that has already been manufactured and do not require further assembly. Examples may include commercial vehicles, manufacturing equipment, IT equipment, and solar equipment. When considering an application for purchase order finance, financiers will assess the performance risk associated with the product. What is the risk of the product not meeting the expectations of the buyer, resulting in the buyer refusing to accept the consignment and therefore refusing to pay for the consignment? Financiers are typically hesitant to finance unfinished products like commodities. An example might be minerals or agricultural produce, or materials. Example, building materials to erect a structure. What about suppliers? Financiers will consider the credibility of suppliers and the reliability of their product when assessing the viability of providing purchase order finance. What rate of interest applies to purchase order finance? In Principle 4, the price of money, see Section 1 of You Don't Need a Business Plan to Secure a Financing Solution for Your Business, where I address the cost of finance. If you've not yet watched Section 1, please consider doing so, as this will give you a good grounding of the principles of financing. The price of money, that is the rate of interest, is very much a function of risk. The financier will assess the risk of default, you not meeting the terms of the loan agreement, and the level of prevailing interest rates as per the prime interest rate. The rate at which purchase order finance is provided will also be influenced by the credibility of the buyer, the credibility of the supplier, the nature of the stock or product, the duration of the trade, and the credibility of the lender. Over what term can a business secure purchase order finance? The term of the loan is a function of the trade duration and may vary depending on the nature of the product and or industry involved. But I have found that financiers typically will provide purchase order finance over around 180 days. How much capital can be secured by way of purchase order finance? The value of the loan is very much a function of the relationship between the value of the purchase order and the value of the supplier invoice. The financier will do a quick calculation to determine the gross profit margin on the trade. Sales revenue, that is the purchase order value, minus the cost of sales, that's the supplier invoice, together with procurement costs, which may include logistics, importation costs, and administrative costs, leaves you with a gross profit from which you can calculate the gross profit margin. Financiers typically look for a minimum gross profit margin of 30% on a trade. Let us now consider Thabang's medical consumables. Thabang comes from a background of medical sales. He has established relationships with corporate buyers and medical equipment suppliers. Thabang started Thabang's medical consumables 3 years ago. His business acts as an intermediary, procuring stock for corporate buyers. Thabang has limited capital with which he can secure stock. Recently, Thabang successfully secured a large purchase order for finished products from a credible corporate buyer to the value of 250,000 rand. The buyer demanded 30-day payment terms from Thabang. Thabang's supplier quoted as follows. Stock price amounts to 135,000 Rand. Other procurement costs amounts to 15,000 Rand. The total cost of sales, therefore, amounts to 150,000 Rand. If successful, this will result in a gross profit of 100,000 Rand or a gross profit margin of 40%. It will take approximately 40 days for the consignment to reach Thabang's customer. Thereafter, Thabang must wait another 30 days for the buyer to pay the invoice. The total duration of the trade amounts to 70 days. But Thabang does not have the capital to secure the stock from the supplier who demand upfront payment before releasing the consignment. Now we can start to answer the 4 questions. Question 1. What do you want and why? Thabang needs funding for a supplier invoice amounting to 135,000 Rand over a term of 70 days. Question 2. How will you repay the debt? Thabang will receive payment from a credible buyer 30 days after the delivery of the consignment. The trade comes with a gross profit margin before taking financing costs into account of 40%. Question 3. Why should we believe you? The trade comes with a credible buyer, credible supplier, and a finished product. Question 4. What if you fail? Thabang will cede the purchase order to the financier. The customer will pay the financier directly. The financier will pay the supplier and retain control over the consignment of stock. If the whole deal were to go bad, the financier can sell the stock and recover some of the capital. Conclusion. The success of securing purchase order finance depends on the financier assessing and approving the buyer. The financier must believe that the purchase order represents sufficient collateral value for the loan. A credible supplier. Financiers must believe that the supplier is reliable. And a finished product. Financiers do not want to have the added risk of a trade that involves an unfinished product. Thank you for watching. I trust you found the content informative. For more videos like this, please visit the Constructum Online Learning channel on YouTube. Good luck with your business.